September of 1938. In the Sverdlovsk region, east of the Urals, dawn comes slowly, wrapped in a thick fog that covers the birch forests and the fields of wheat already reaped. The air is damp, cold, motionless. In the middle of that stillness, a 13-year-old boy walks alone along a dirt path, his boots caked with mud and a notebook pressed to his chest. His name is Pavlik Morozov, and that morning he is going to commit an act from which there is no return. The village of Gerasimovka is still asleep. Through the windows, the first gleams of sun slip in. From the chicken coops comes a lazy noise or two. Pavlik does not look back. He has walked almost 1 hour from his house to the wooden building that serves as the local GPU barracks, the regime's political police. In front of the door, he stops for a few seconds. His breath forms little clouds of vapor. He does not tremble. He does not seem to hesitate. He knocks 3 times with his knuckles. A guard opens and looks at him, surprised. Inside, the air smells of tobacco and damp papers. "What are you doing here so early, comrade?" the man asks, half mocking. Pavlik raises the notebook. "I've come to report." The guard looks at him without understanding, then motions him inside. The wooden floor creaks under his steps. The walls are covered with portraits of Stalin and slogans written in red letters. The citizen's duty is to protect the state. In a side office, a middle-aged officer smokes beside a stove. His boots shine. His immaculate uniform contrasts with the boy's grime. He lifts his eyes from the desk and sizes him up with curiosity. "What's your name?" "Pavlik Morozov." "And what have you come to tell me, Pavlik?" The boy looks him in the eye. "My father lies to the state." The officer slowly stubs out the cigarette in the ashtray. There's no surprise on his face, only a cold, professional attention. He stands, comes around the desk, and sits facing the boy. "Your father?" he asks. "Yes, comrade. He is the head of the kolkhoz. He says he delivers the grain, but it isn't true. He falsifies the papers and helps the kulaks." The man nods almost imperceptibly. He takes out a pen, opens a folder, and begins to write. "Are you sure? I saw it with my own eyes. And do you know what happens to those who lie to the party?" Pavlik keeps silent. Then he answers, his voice tense but firm. "Yes, that's why I came." The officer stops writing. He watches him for a moment, in silence and with a faint glint of interest in his gaze. Maybe he thinks how strange it is to see a child speak of treason with an adult's serenity. Maybe he thinks of nothing. Finally, he nods. "Your statement will be taken officially. You have done the right thing, comrade." He hands him a sheet to sign. Pavlik's hand trembles just a little as he holds the pen. He writes his name in clumsy strokes. The officer takes the document, files it in a folder, and signals to the guard. "Escort the boy to his home," he says, crushing the last scrap of cigarette. "His duty has been fulfilled." Pavlik drops his gaze, tightens his coat, and leaves the office. The door closes behind him with a sharp thud. In the hallway, the sound of his steps mingles with the crackle of the stove. Outside, the daylight has grown clearer. The boy walks back along the same path, the empty notebook in his hand. In the distance, a dog's bark and a rooster's crow can be heard. Nothing has changed, but without knowing it, Pavlik has just condemned his father to death. No one forced him, no one threatened him. He sincerely believes he has done the right thing. In 1938, the Soviet Union was no longer a country. It was a machine. The Great Purges spread like a fever. Any name could become, from one day to the next, a synonym for treason. Nights filled with engines and footsteps in the corridors. A knock at the door at midnight no longer meant a visit, but a disappearance. Whoever was taken by the men of the GPU did not return. The neighbors knew it, but they did not ask. Knowing too much had become dangerous. Terror had acquired a logic of its own. The state needed no proof, only suspicion. The newspapers announced daily conspiracies, saboteurs in the factories, spies in the kolkhozes, infiltrators in the party. Military tribunals turned into theaters of obedience, handed down sentences in minutes. Stalin had achieved the unthinkable. Fear felt natural, part of the air. In the schools, children grew up breathing that fear without knowing it. From 6 years old, they repeated oaths to the party and to Comrade Stalin. "I promise to love the motherland above all," said the first line of the Young Pioneers Manual. On school murals, one saw drawings of smiling peasants handing over wheat, steadfast soldiers, children with red neckerchiefs looking toward the future, and beneath those images, an unequivocal message. If your father criticizes Comrade Stalin, the son's duty is to inform. The state had discovered a tool more powerful than propaganda: education. To turn informing into a virtue, to transform suspicion into moral duty. In rural classrooms, young teachers taught students that true love was love for the state, not for the family. Reading books told stories of little heroes who denounced their parents and were rewarded with medals. In one of them, an imaginary boy discovered that his mother hid rationed bread and handed her over to the local committee. The tale ended with a hymn. The faithful son does not fear his mother's tears. In the villages, paranoia seeped into the kitchens. Conversations died the moment a stranger entered the room. The walls, they said, had ears, and they truly did. In every neighborhood there were informants, in every factory the party's eyes and ears. No one knew who might be listening. No one trusted anyone. In that inverted world, betrayal ceased to be a sin and became a symbol of purity. Citizens competed to prove their loyalty by denouncing others. One word, a misinterpreted complaint, a joke repeated in the wrong place were enough to condemn a person and their whole family. The hamlets were laboratories of mistrust, where each peasant watched the other to survive. In churches, converted into warehouses or workers' clubs, the portraits of saints were replaced with Stalin's face. In homes, religious icons vanished, replaced by portraits of the leader with red flowers around him. Faith had been transformed. Now there was only one God, and he was human. The state was judge, executioner, and savior at the same time. And while adults learned to keep silent, children learned to watch. They learned that the attentive gaze, the one that sees everything, was a patriotic act. That true loyalty might demand sacrifices, even of blood. In Gerasimovka, that climate arrived as slogans, posters, and rumors. Fear did not need soldiers to impose itself. The eyes of a convinced child were enough. In 1938, in the Soviet Union, fear was no longer a feeling. It was a structure, and informing, a virtue. On a hill at the edge of the forest stands a dark wooden house. The planks are cracked by the cold, and smoke from the stove rises in slow spirals above the roof. There lives the Morozov family. The father, Trofim, his wife, Trofimia, and their eldest son, Pavlik, along with two younger brothers. It is a modest dwelling, like that of most peasants in the region, but inside it keeps a stubborn dignity. A clean table, an icon covered with a rag, a portrait of Stalin hanging just above it. Trofim Morozov is a man of about 40 years, with a weathered face and tired eyes. He has spent more than 1 decade working as head of the kolkhoz, the village collective farm. Each month, he must send the district the grain quotas Moscow demands, quotas so high that not even the most fertile land could sustain them. He knows the numbers are impossible, that the peasants lie to survive, and that he himself, to avoid punishment, falsifies certificates. He does not do it out of rebellion or greed, but by instinct, to protect his own from a system that devours without distinguishing the guilty. At night, Trofim sits before the kerosene lamp and fills out the forms. He writes invented figures with the calm of someone resigned to lying in order to stay alive. Pavlik, seated in the corner, watches without understanding. At school, the boy has learned that hiding the truth from the state is treason, that whoever falsifies documents is an enemy of the people. Every pen stroke he sees on the paper feels like a wound. One night, he dares to ask, "Why do you put different numbers, Father?" Trofim looks at him, weary, and answers without raising his voice, "Because wheat does not grow on speeches, Pavlik." But in class they said, "Saboteurs hide grain to starve the people." The father sighs. In class they say many things, but here, hunger has first and last names. Pavlik does not press further, but he writes down what he has heard in his mind. In his notebook, under drawings of flags and slogans, he writes, "Father does not trust the party." His mother, Trofimia, is the house's silent axis. a woman with rough hands and light eyes, used to keeping more quiet than she says. She lives on the edge between love for her son and fear of his ideological purity. In her face, tenderness and vigilance mix. She knows Pavlik's devotion to the party is absolute, and that devotion frightens her. When the boy repeats the teacher's phrases or reads Stalin's speeches aloud, she only nods, feigning pride. But inside, she feels something like cold. One afternoon, while Trofim chops wood in the yard, the mother whispers to a neighbor. He no longer speaks like a child. He repeats everything he hears at school. That's good, the woman answers without conviction. They say he'll be a good pioneer. Trofimia lowers her voice, glancing toward the window. Sometimes I think he hears us even when he's not here. That night, Pavlik slips in without a sound. He hears his mother say to his father, "Hush when he is present. He has the party's ears." The boy stands still in the half-light, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of those words. The party's ears. He does not know whether that is praise or accusation, but he takes it as a mission. Trofim looks at him from the threshold. The lamplight half illuminates him. "Were you spying on us, Pavlik?" "I was only listening," he replies. "The teacher says one must listen, always." The father sets the axe by the door and observes him with a mixture of sadness and fear. He no longer sees in him the son he knew, but a stranger's gaze. "Someday you'll understand that not everything spoken aloud deserves to be heard." Pavlik nods, but his mind is already elsewhere. At school, they taught him that love of the motherland demands sacrifices. And that night, for the first time, he understands that the sacrifice can have a proper name. At the Gerasimovka school, winter arrives earlier than in the rest of the country. Snow covers the roof and the classrooms smell of wood smoke and damp chalk. On one wall, an enormous portrait of Stalin watches the students with his unmoving mustache and paternal gaze. Beneath it, a phrase painted in red, "Thanks to Stalin, we live happily." Among the 30 children at the desks, Pavlik Morozov is the most diligent. Always in the front row, always upright, the red pioneer scarf perfectly folded at his neck. He knows by heart every rule, every speech, every quote. When the teacher asks who can recite the Komsomol oath, Pavlik stands before the others without looking at his notes. "I promise to love my motherland, keep its secrets, and denounce its enemies, even if those enemies hide in my own home." The teacher nods with a proud smile. "You are the future, Pavlik. Don't let anyone lead you away from duty." The boy hears those words as if they were a sacred order. He repeats them to himself as he walks home, stepping on the frozen snow. Don't let anyone lead you away from duty. It sounds simple. It sounds just. In his mind, the world divides with mathematical clarity, those who serve the party and those who betray it. At recess, the other children play, laugh, throw snowballs. Pavlik stays to the side, observing. He takes notes in his notebook: who arrives late, who speaks ill of the teacher, who does not salute Stalin's portrait upon entering. He does it without malice, with the serenity of someone fulfilling a duty. When the teacher asks him to supervise his group's conduct, he records each fault in neat, emotionless script. Sometimes, at home, he writes what he hears, names, comments, phrases he does not fully understand. It is a habit, almost a custom. He feels neither fear nor guilt. He feels purpose. In his childish mind, the country is an enormous machine that needs constant vigilance, and he is part of its mechanism. During school ceremonies, Pavlik leads the pioneer chorus. He sings with a clear voice the hymns of socialism. Our son is Stalin, our father is the party. While the others do it out of inertia, he does it with faith. His teacher, a young man who grew up in the new Soviet era, sees in him the embodiment of the ideal citizen, obedient, pure, incorruptible. One afternoon, the teacher calls him to the desk after class. "Pavlik, the country needs youths like you. Not everyone understands the responsibility we bear." "Responsibility for what, comrade teacher?" "To see what others do not see," the man replies. "Not to look away when someone deceives the state." Pavlik nods. The phrase brands itself in his mind. That night, while the wind beats against the windows of his house, He opens his notebook and writes, "The enemy can hide under the same roof." He looks at those words for a long time, as if he had discovered them himself. His mother comes into the room and asks what he is doing awake. "I'm working for school," the boy answers without raising his eyes. She watches him from the doorway. In the lamp's glow, Pavlik's face has an expression she does not recognize, neither childish nor adult, only impenetrable. While his generation sings hymns or dreams of flying planes, Pavlik learns to observe, to listen, to record every gesture, every silence, every shadow. He does it without hatred, with a devotion that seems innocent. He believes he's protecting his country that way. And in his notebook, the pages fill with names. Dawn on the 6th of September of 1938 comes shrouded in a thick mist that hides the fields. Pavlik Morozov leaves his house before the rooster crows. He wears his coat buttoned to the neck, and inside it, a notebook. On its pages are figures, phrases, and names written in a child's hand. He walks unhurriedly, with steady steps, toward the same wooden building he visited weeks earlier, the local GPU barracks. The guard recognizes him and lets him pass without asking. The interior smells of coal and ink. In the office, the same thin mustached officer lifts his gaze from the desk. "You again, Pavlik?" he says in a tone mixing surprise and boredom. "I've brought more information," the boy replies, extending the notebook. The man opens it and flips through the pages. He reads aloud slowly, "My father, Trofim, hides grain from the state, falsifies kolkhoz documents, protects the kulaks." He looks up. "Do you know what this means?" Pavlik nods with the coolness learned at school. "Yes, it means justice." The officer remains silent for a few seconds. Then he takes the notebook and files it in a folder. He signals to the guard at the door, "Go get Trofim Morozov. Let no one warn him." Within hours, the GPU men cross the village. People watch them from the windows, not daring to speak. Pavlik stands by the well, watching the agents enter his house. His mother screams, struggles, calls her husband by name, but no one answers. They bring him out in handcuffs, his shirt unbuttoned and his gaze lost. "Father," Pavlik says, barely a whisper. Trofim looks at him sideways, confused. In his eyes there is no rage, only incredulity. "You knew as well?" he asks before being pushed into the truck. That night the house is left empty. The silence is heavier than the wind. His mother does not speak. Pavlik tries to eat, but the soup grows cold on the plate. Outside, the village murmurs. No one dares approach. Informing has become contagious. Everyone fears that any word will be taken as sympathy for the traitor. Trofim Morozov's trial is held in the city of Sverdlovsk. There is no jury and no lawyer, only 3 military judges, a prosecutor, and a folder with the son's denunciation. The evidence is scant. A couple of falsified documents, witnesses forced to testify, Pavlik's notebook. It is enough. The prosecutor reads the sentence with the impersonal voice of someone reading a weather report. Guilty of treason against the Soviet state, penalty, execution. On the 8th of September, before dawn, Trofim Morozov is shot alongside other prisoners. No one in the village receives official notice, only the rumor brought by a postman who does not know how to keep quiet. His mother falls to her knees in the yard and repeats his name again and again until her voice is gone. Pavlik does not cry. He spends the days shut in his room, staring at the notebook he no longer dares to open. In the village, some call him a hero, others a monster, but no one speaks Trofim's name. It is forbidden. In the Soviet Union of 1938, the dead are erased faster than the guilty. And in Gerasimovka, a boy has just learned that the state's justice needs no truth, only faith. The news spread with the speed of a rumor blessed by power. First in the district, then across the province, the story was heard of the young pioneer who had had the courage to denounce his own father. A son of the new socialism, wrote the local newspapers, an example to all the children of the Union. The words traveled faster than the truth. In a few days, Pavlik Morozov became a name pronounced with pride in speeches and with fear in homes. The party wasted no time. Agents of the regional committee arrived in Gerasimovka with photographers and reporters. They made the boy pose in front of the wooden house, placed the red uniform neckerchief on him, and asked him to look toward the horizon. They asked what had moved him to act. Pavlik replied with a firm, almost mechanical voice. "Duty to the motherland stands above all." That sentence appeared the next day on the front page of Uralskaya Pravda, beneath the headline, "The Little Hero of the Kolkhoz, Pavlik Morozov, Guardian of Socialism." The message was clear. Loyalty to the state could be measured in blood. In the village, however, the reactions were different. The peasants read the paper in silence, some with disbelief, others with anger. In the markets and the bread lines, Pavlik's name was spoken in a low voice, as if it were a curse. Mothers pulled their children aside when they saw him pass in the street. Men took off their caps, not out of respect, but out of fear. At school, things changed. The teacher, obeying orders, congratulated him in public, gave him a badge, and brought him to the front. "This is the example of the true Soviet pioneer," he said solemnly. "Remember his name and his courage." The children clapped by reflex, but once outside, they avoided him. No one wanted to share a table with him in the dining hall. No one wanted to play with the trader's son. One day, as he walked home, an old woman selling potatoes by the road spat at his feet and muttered bitterly, "The state won't feed you when you're hungry, boy." Pavlik stopped, looked at her without speaking. He did not feel guilt, only a mix of pride and confusion. In his mind, sacrifice had a moral meaning. The teacher had said that socialism's heroes must endure rejection because the people did not yet understand their greatness. At home, the atmosphere was more unbearable than the cold. His mother, Trofimia, hardly spoke. She moved through the rooms in silence, her gaze far away. Each gesture of her son's hurt her without remedy. She wanted to hate him, but could not. She wanted to forgive him, but did not understand how. When she saw him reviewing his lessons with the same notebook in which he had written the denunciation, she felt a vertigo she could not name. One night, while he ate in silence, she sat by the window and murmured without looking at him, "Your father believed in justice too, only his kind didn't need to kill anyone." Pavlik did not answer. He chewed slowly, as if he had not heard. In his mind, those words sounded like doubt, and doubt was the most dangerous enemy. Winter came early that year. Snow covered the roads and the village was cut off. Pavlik continued attending the youth committee meetings, speaking firmly about the citizens' duty, and sometimes reciting slogans in front of officials who came from the city. But in every photograph, his gaze seemed more distant, more empty. He knew duty had a price, and he was learning that sometimes that price was loneliness. His mother watched him from the window, wrapped in an overlarge coat, walking alone through the snow. She knew her son did not understand what he had done, and that he would never quite understand it. Summer was dying slowly over the Urals when Pavlik Morozov disappeared. It was the 3rd of September of 1938, an ordinary day in appearance. Sunlight filtered through the birches and the air smelled of damp earth and dry leaves. Pavlik left home early, accompanied by his younger cousin, 9 years old. He had told his mother they were going into the forest to pick berries. He carried no notebook and no coat, only a wicker basket and the confidence of one who fears nothing. Hours passed and the children did not return. At dusk, his mother went out to the road, looking toward the forest. The next morning, the neighbors organized a search. The men went among the trees, shouting the names until they were hoarse. 5 days later, a peasant found something in the brush, a piece of red cloth, a pioneer neckerchief. Then the body. First Pavlik, then his cousin. They had been stabbed with no trace of their killers. The news fell on the village like thunder. No one dared speak in public, but everyone knew who might have done it. Rumors pointed to the father's family, the grandfather, the uncle, 2 adult cousins. Men humiliated, expelled from the kolkhoz, persecuted under the weight of the treason they had not committed. In a system where guilt was hereditary, so was vengeance. Within hours, the GPU arrived in Gerasimovka. They interrogated the relatives and forced them to confess. The trial was swift, almost immediate. In the newspapers, the headline was written before the sentence, "The murderers of the little hero received their punishment." No lawyer, no defense, only a prosecutor who spoke of enemies of the people and a judge who nodded silently. The 4 men were shot the same day in the courthouse yard. But Pavlik's death did not stop there. The regime had found something more valuable than a martyr, a symbol. In the following days, the boy's story became a perfect parable. The dailies described his murder as the work of dark forces that hated Soviet progress. Radio announcers repeated his name solemnly. On posters, his child's face, with the red neckerchief in the wind, became an emblem of purity. Family tragedy turned into ideological theater. The party ordered ceremonies in every school. Children swore to be like Pavlik, to pledge their loyalty to the state above all else. In Moscow, the press called him the young guardian of socialism, slain by the enemies of the people. Meanwhile, in Gerasimovka, the forest returned to silence. The wind stirred the leaves over the grave where the two bodies rested. No one spoke of the crime. No one mourned it openly. Pavlik's mother was transferred soon after, without explanation, to a place from which she never returned. The country needed heroes, not orphans, and the dead boy served better than the living boy. In a few months, Pavlik Morozov was no longer a son or a student or a peasant. He was an idea, a warning, a reminder that in the empire of fear, purity was also paid for with blood. Pavlik Morozov's death soon became a script. In Moscow, the editors of Pravda received the direct order to publish his story with the tone, "Do a martyr." In a few days, the boy from the lost village in the Urals was lifted to socialism's heavens. Headlines repeated with military precision, "Pioneer Pavlik Morozov, Martyr of Socialism." The presses could not keep up. Pamphlets, poems, illustrated biographies were printed. Newspapers described Pavlik as a model for all Soviet youth, a pure hero who loved the motherland more than his own parents. In schools, teachers read his phrases aloud and students, standing, swore to follow his example. In the new children's readers, a lesson opened with a sentence that left no room for doubt. To love the motherland more than one's parents is the citizen's highest honor. The myth was carefully built, every detail adjusted. The boy was no longer a peasant's son, but an exemplary pioneer. He no longer lived in an anonymous village, but on a heroic stage where innocence blended with sacrifice. In school drawings, Pavlik appeared standing, serene-faced, looking toward the horizon, the red neckerchief waving in the wind. The artist did not need to know him. The party's instructions sufficed. Songs began to circulate throughout the country. Youth choirs intoned solemn melodies with lyrics about the boy who heard the voice of truth. In 1939, a short film produced by Mosfilm Studios reenacted his story. A brave child, a traitor father, a grateful people. The audience wept. The myth had worked. In every republic of the Union, Morozov clubs were founded. Pioneers with their red scarves competed to memorize his biography. In school ceremonies, a motto was repeated: "We will be like Pavlik." Thousands of children pronounced his name without knowing who he really had been, convinced that his sacrifice was the model of virtue. In Moscow, a bronze statue was unveiled, Pavlik upright, notebook in hand, gazing toward a point that did not exist. The monument's base bore the words, "For truth, for the party." There were always flowers. School delegations lined up to lay bouquets at the hero's feet. But the myth needed more than bronze and songs. It needed silence. Any voice that recalled the real story had to disappear. His mother, Trofimia, was still alive. Journalists wanted to interview her, but soon she was no longer available. She was transferred, officially, to an agricultural region in the north to work in a new kolkhoz. No one saw her again. No one asked. In the records, her name vanished as if she had never existed. The party had achieved what it sought, to turn a family tragedy into a national legend. Pavlik ceased to be a flesh and blood child. He became idea, instrument, dogma. A statue could be replicated. A living mother could speak. In the Soviet Union, heroes were not born of truth. They were born of usefulness. And Pavlik Morozov, the boy who denounced his father, was now the most useful of all. The myth of Pavlik survived the war, the bombings, the hunger. As the Soviet Union rebuilt itself among ruins and metals, his figure stood intact, like a bronze statue amid the dust. During the 1940s and 1950s, the regime needed simple examples, figures that reminded citizens that duty came before blood, that the motherland was the only family deserving fidelity. Pavlik was perfect for that, a pure, incorruptible child without doubts or shades. Every school in the country received once a year a circular from the Ministry of Education with precise instructions. On the 19th of September, the date of his death, Pavlik Morozov Day must be celebrated. Teachers decorated classrooms with portraits of the young pioneer, and children recited oaths before his image. Some, the youngest, believed he had been a saint. Others, the older ones, feared him. The reading primers began with his story. Pavlik Morozov loved the motherland more than his father, and that is why he will live forever. The phrase was repeated so often it ceased to be a sentence and became a slogan. In post-war films, his face appeared briefly, a wink to the viewer, a reminder of revolutionary purity. In newsreels, school delegations visited his grave in procession. Announcers spoke in grave tones. Pavlik's example guides our youth toward the light of communism. In practice, his story had become a tool. It served to reinforce vigilance, to keep alive the distrust that sustained the system. In homes, parents taught children to keep silent, not because they loved silence, but because they feared it. One phrase, one complaint, a misplaced word sufficed to spark suspicion. Children grew up knowing they might be overheard, and that the right thing was to listen as well. Pavlik was no longer a character from the past. He was an invisible presence, a moral mirror. What would Pavlik do? A teacher asked at a breach of discipline. He would inform. Families became little states. Each watched the other. Neighbors denounced neighbors, friends denounced friends. Distrust became part of emotional education. Informing ceased to be a political act and became a reflex. The party had obtained what it wanted, a country that watched itself. The walls listened, but they no longer needed to. People did the work. And whenever someone doubted, it was enough to recall the story of the boy who chose the motherland over his blood. With time, Pavlik ceased to be a child and became an abstraction. He had no age, no face, no voice. He was the very idea of absolute loyalty, an imperishable symbol, a tenderness-less faith. Compassion was replaced by obedience, love by suspicion, and faith in the state took the place that had once belonged to humanity. Decades passed. The bronze of the statues began to oxidize, the songs were forgotten, and the children who had sworn to be like Pavlik grew up, aged, had children, and learned to keep silent for other reasons. The Soviet Union, that world which had turned an act of informing into a political gospel, collapsed under its own silence. When the empire crumbled, its archives, those temples of secrecy, began to open, and then the myth began to fall apart. Historians, reviewing the case's original documents, found an absence as eloquent as any proof. There was no official record that Pavlik Morozov had filed a formal denunciation against his father, no report with his signature, no interrogation transcript, not even a dated statement. Only indirect mentions, copied names, stories rewritten in different versions depending on the province or the newspaper. Some researchers suggested the GPU had molded the tale from the start, that Pavlik was nothing more than a convenient figure, a child turned symbolic witness to justify a string of local arrests during the purges. Others went further. They claimed the real boy might have died because of family disputes and that the regime simply took his death and turned it into a parable. Surviving witnesses did not agree either. Some remembered him as a quiet boy, too serious for his age. Others said he was naive, unaware of the power he had helped to awaken. In oral versions, Pavlik was hero, victim, traitor, or martyr, depending on who told it. None could be proven. All had a bit of truth and a bit of fear. Party archives also revealed that the propaganda machinery had acted before there was a judicial file. The Pravda article was published days before the trial of his supposed killers. The GPU had already prepared the narrative, the speeches, even the epitaph's text. The story was designed with ideological precision: a pure boy, a guilty father, an exemplary sacrifice. The moral content was perfect, reality dispensable. And so, when the truth emerged, it was already too late. The myth had done its job. For half a century, his image had served to mold entire generations. It had taught that obedience was a virtue, that loyalty must be absolute, that blood and love could be sacrificed without guilt when the party demanded it. In a country built on symbols, Pavlik Morozov had been the most effective. It did not matter whether he existed as they told it, whether he denounced, or whether he was a victim of his own surroundings. What mattered was what he represented. The myth had outlived its truth, and in the history of regimes, that is always enough. When the Soviet Colossus fell, its invisible temples fell as well. Cities filled with broken monuments, faded slogans, rusted plaques no one read anymore. And among all those symbols time devoured, the name Pavlik Morozov disappeared almost without a sound. There were no decrees or ceremonies. People simply stopped mentioning it. In the 1990s, the schools that bore his name were renamed. The Morozov Pioneer Clubs closed. The songs stopped being taught. The portraits were removed from classrooms. In Moscow, the bronze statue, the boy with the notebook in hand looking to the horizon, rusted slowly under the rain. One day, someone dismantled it without notice. No one asked where it had been taken. In the provinces, things were slower. In some towns, the sculptures remained standing, forgotten, covered in moss and weeds without flowers or legible inscriptions. The children who played nearby did not know who he was. To them, he was only a strange face in metal, a memory of a time they no longer understood. In Gerasimovka, his native village, the oblivion was even quieter. His grave, which for decades had received school delegations, became a mound of earth covered with weeds. The path that led to it vanished among the shrubs. The house where he lived collapsed under its own roof. No one rebuilt it. No one put up a new plaque. The oldest villagers still remembered something. In winters, when the snow fell without a sound, they sometimes mentioned his name by the warmth of a stove. He was a good boy, one would say, looking at the ground. He only believed what he was taught. Others replied bitterly, no, he wasn't good. No child should believe that much. Younger generations listened without interest. Pavlik was no longer myth or warning. He was a blurry story, a shadow the elders evoked with resignation. The country that had made him had ceased to exist. The ideologies that used him had turned to ashes, and with them, their hero faded as well. In local museums, his yellowing portraits still hang in forgotten corners. No one cleans them, no one restores them. The wooden frames are worm-eaten, and under the dust, one can still read an inscription: Pioneer Pavlik Morozov, example of fidelity to the party. History, the very machine that once glorified him, now erases him with the same efficiency with which it invented him. He serves no purpose now. He sustains no faith. Only the echo of his name remains, floating in the archives and on the tired lips of the old. Pavlik Morozov, the boy who was hero, traitor, martyr, and ghost, ended up becoming the only thing history cannot control. Oblivion. The forest has closed its scars again. Where the bodies of Pavlik and his cousin once lay, the trees have grown so dense they hardly let the light through. The air is heavy, damp, laden with the smell of moss and old wood. The exact place no one remembers anymore. Only the oldest can point vaguely among the trunks. Over there, where the river bends. The wind blows through the branches and seems to carry ancient voices. There are no monuments, no flowers, no traces, only silence. The kind of silence that does not belong to forgetfulness, but to guilt. The country that turned him into a martyr no longer exists. Its hymns have gone quiet. Its flags have been placed in display cases. Its ideological temples are ruins covered in dust. But the shadow that created him did not entirely leave. It lives, invisible, wherever obedience is mistaken for virtue, where blind loyalty disguises itself as duty, where young voices learn to repeat before they think. The state that used him taught a lesson more enduring than its own power, that a system can survive only as long as it gets its children to believe in it more than in their parents. Pavlik was the mold for that belief, the face of a purity turned into a weapon. And though the bronze of his statues has been melted down, the message he represented still resounds every time faith in an idea replaces compassion for people. The forest is still there. Roots tangle over the remnants of a story that wished to be eternal and ended devoured by the earth. If one stops to listen, there are no hymns or slogans, only the murmur of the wind, a whisper that sounds almost like a warning. The boy believed he was serving his country, but his country asked him to betray everything that made him human. And as the wind carries the dry leaves from the ground, it seems the forest itself remembers that empires fall, myths come undone, and that, in the end, the only thing that survives of history is the conscience of what must never be repeated.